Hi, this is Anita from the Dusty Roads podcast and from the blog A Bus on a Dusty Road. We're all about living life as a global citizen. Today I want to tell you a little bit about a fascinating bridge that's in Hanoi, Vietnam. And this is a bridge that I happen to ride over quite a bit on my bicycle. And in fact, this last summer I fell on the bridge and ended up in an accident that was serious enough to put me in the hospital for a few days. But it's a bridge which is called the Long Bien Bridge. And it's an iconic bridge that goes over the Red River in Vietnam, which basically connects the downtown area of Hanoi, Vietnam, to what is known as the Long Bien area. What's fascinating about this Long Bien Bridge is that this bridge was built by Gustave Eiffel. Yes, it's the same Eiffel that built the Eiffel Tower. So when you look at the bridge, you can kind of see how the Eiffel Tower and the bridge have some of the similarities in construction with sort of like the same type of metal being used. Eiffel was born in France in 1832. And, he worked on his most famous work, of course, is the Eiffel Tower in Paris, France. That was built for the Universal Exposition that took place in 1889. But he also made contributions to the Statue of Liberty in New York City and many other buildings and bridges around Asia. One of the bridges, which he did in Vietnam, and there were several bridges which he designed and built in Vietnam, but one of them is the Long Bien Bridge. He designed the bridge for an architect firm from Paris, and the bridge was constructed from 1899 to 1902. It was completed in 1903. And it would connect the downtown part of Hanoi to the Long Bien, which would be over the Red River. And this was actually a really important route because it's, towards this way that you get to the port of Haiphong and you get to, if you want to go to Halong Bay, you have to go over this river. So this really was a very important bridge to have during this time. It was first named after Paul Doumer, which was the Governor General of Indochine. But then, of course, he wasn't very popular, and Vietnam fought a war with the French, and so when the Vietnamese got control back of North Vietnam in the 1950s, they renamed the bridge to the Long Bien Bridge. The Long Bien Bridge is about 2.5 kilometers long, or about 1.5 miles in length. At the time it was built, in 1903, it was the longest bridge in Asia, and more than 3,000 Vietnamese helped take part in the construction of the bridge. So during the time it was built, it was a huge architectural project to be able to build this kind of bridge in Vietnam. The bridge basically has two narrow roadways and a train track in the middle. So the train would go through the middle of the bridge, and then it would be basically a one-lane road one way and a one-lane road another way. And the road is kind of a little bit narrow, so basically just one car would fit. There wouldn't be really any passing. It would basically just be one car going down that bridge. The bridge was, of course, of great strategic importance because it allowed them to access the seaport and to secure control of North Vietnam. So this actually was a very important bridge for the French. The Long Bien Bridge was also an important strategic bridge for the Americans to bomb during the Vietnam War because, of course, they wanted to be able to cut Hanoi off from the port of Haiphong and other places. So this is a very heavily bombarded during the Vietnam War. That's why even today you can see these huge sections of the old bridge, and you can see where there were bombs and the old bridge was completely destroyed. Since during the war, the bridge was of such strategic importance because it was the only bridge that connected Hanoi's capital to the main seaport of Haiphong. So for a long time, this was really the only bridge that would get you across there except by boat. The first attack of the bridge came in 1967, and but the bridge was so well built that the CIA reports of the bombing said the bridge did not appear to sustain much damage. Throughout the war, the bridge was always a target for the Americans' bombings. And there is a rumor that I haven't been able to quite verify, but I did hear that they would put some of the American servicemen to work actually on the reconstruction of the bridge, and so the Americans stopped bombing it for a while. But throughout this entire war period, it was only once in 1972 that the bridge could not be used, despite this being one of the most heavily bombed bridges around during the wartime. Many American servicemen that were sent to bomb this bridge, of course, end up being shot down and ended up in the famous, Vietnamese prison there, which in America they used to joke and call it the Hanoi Hilton. Today the Long Bien Bridge is one of the many bridges that links the Home Kien, or the downtown district of the old quarters, with Long Bien. Cars today are not allowed to travel on the bridge. And I remember years ago when I traveled on the bridge, the bridge just had like wooden little boards that you could see the river below. And then recently now they've made it so it's got tar on it and you can't see the river below. You'll still find, if you travel on the bridge, you will still find there's trains traveling right down the center of the bridge. It's a very popular place for people to sort of walk, on the bridge, take a motorcycle on the bridge, ride a bicycle, or just to, go onto the bridge and see the bridge and to look at the Red River below. It's very interesting to be on the bridge if a train comes by, because actually the train is really close to where you're driving. Because it's not a very wide bridge, so you've got like basically 3 lanes. You've got 1 lane, 2 lanes for cars going either direction, and then you've got the train right in the middle. So when the train comes, you can really see all the aspects of the train. If you're interested, I have a blog that I've written all about this, entitled "Who Built the Long Bien Bridge in Hanoi, Vietnam?" And with that bridge, I have a video which I show you some of the videos that I've taken as I've ridden across the bridge, because this actually is one of the bridges where I will ride my bike over quite a bit to get to the other part of Vietnam. It's, in fact, the only bridge that you can really bicycle across legally. The other bridges, are basically for motorcycles and cars, and this is the only bridge for the bicyclists can go. So it's really quite a fascinating bridge to be able to bicycle over, because you can see some of the life of the river below. You can see some of the life from the markets below, and you can actually stop and you can, just look at the Red River and see some of the area there. I'm, totally amazed with Gustave Eiffel, and to build such an amazing bridge in another country, and for it still today to be standing, and for it to be so well built that even throughout all those years of its bombing throughout the Vietnam War, or as they call it here, the American War, that the bridge still today is usable and can still be standing and can still be repaired. And that for many, many years, it was the only bridge that was used to go to the other part. In fact, as an interesting take on this, in 1972, when the American servicemen were released from the prison and were to board the flights to go back to America, they boarded white and green camouflage army buses, and they were driven over the Long Bien Bridge to the airport on the other side to return home to the United States. So here's a bridge that has a rich history with a country like America, almost from the time to being bombed to the time of the bridge being used to send our servicemen from the war back home. Thank you so much for listening. We hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And, give us a thumbs up. If you've enjoyed it, we'd love to hear from you. Check out our blog, A Bus on a Dusty Road. We'll put a link below to our post about the Long Bien Bridge. And we hope that you will go about living your life as a global citizen, because that's really what life is all about, that we all sort of learn to accept one another, and we all live our lives as a global citizen and learn to appreciate other cultures, countries, and places around the world. I feel so lucky and blessed that we can live in such a great an amazing world that is filled with so many amazing places to explore and learn about. Thank you so much for listening.